Guys, today there's two videos for you. This first one is about the differences between polymers and monomers, and then the second video is going to be about the four different biological molecules and kind of their functions and what they are, just kind of like a deep dive into each of the biomolecules. And this is the last thing, these two videos are the last things that are in our biochemistry unit that we're working on right now. So just to start out, a polymer is, so just remember that you can definitely watch this video also from your phone. That's what I would recommend so that you can fill in OneNote at the same time as you watch. So if you need to pause and switch to your phone, go ahead and do that. Okay. So a polymer is a large molecule made of repeating parts. Polymer is a word that has different definitions in different sort of like areas of science and also areas of the English language. But for us, this is what it means, is a large molecule made of repeating parts. A monomer is one part that makes up a polymer. Okay, and just as sort of a helpful hint, anytime you see poly, that means many, and mono means one, always. So just kind of an easy way to remember that. Okay, so if we look at this diagram here of a small polymer, this is just an example of what it's like. It's like beads on a string, where each bead is a monomer. The entire thing is a polymer. And the bonds in between the monomers are covalent bonds. Depending on what the polymer is, they could be polar or they could be nonpolar. So this is just a visual example of what monomers and polymers are. All right, so now we're going to start talking about what this next unit is actually about, which is, or not this unit, but this section, which is the biological molecules. And what's kind of tricky about these is that they can be called many different names. So this list here is just all of the different things you might see that reference kind of the same thing. So biomolecule, bio means life. So these are molecules used by living things. Organic molecule we talked about last week. That's molecule that contains carbon. And then a macromolecule, macro just means big. So this is a large molecule. For our purposes, these words are interchangeable, which means that you can use any of them to refer to the same thing. And same thing on your test. You might see it ask you for an organic molecule. You might see it ask you for a biomolecule. But just know that they're all just different words to mean the same thing. And when it asks you for a biomolecule or an organic molecule or a macromolecule, there are only four possible answers, and they're the ones that we're going to be talking about in this video and also the next one. So they're your carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbohydrates, I'm just going to go through this quickly, and then the next video we'll also talk about it. Carbohydrates, the monomer of them, so the unit, the subunit is monosaccharide. And that's worth mentioning that subunit might be something you see when it's asking you for a monomer. So it might not say what's the monomer, it might say the subunits or it's made up of, and that means what is the monomer. For lipids, Actually, let's just do carbs all the way across. So foods that are carbs are sugars, starches, grains, and actually fruits and veggies, which you might not think of them as carbs, but they are. And then some molecules that are examples of carbs are glucose, sucrose, um, I'll say fructose, chitin, and glycogen. And just as sort of a helpful hint with carbs, usually they end with OSE, OSE. Obviously, you can see on this list, not always, but usually they do. Also, glyco, anytime you see glyco, that is also a signifier that it's a carb. So OSE or glyco. All right, lipids. So for lipids, the monomer is called a fatty acid. Foods are fats, so that should help you remember the monomer. Oils and waxes, like beeswax, which is not really a food, but I'll still put it on there. Um, and then for your molecules, lipids make up things like cholesterol, some hormones, steroids, and something called phospholipids, which we'll talk about later on. They make up the membranes of your cells. Okay, for proteins, the monomer is an amino acid. Example molecules are enzymes, hemoglobin, which carries oxygen around your body, insulin, which breaks down um, sugars and allows them to be absorbed so that your blood sugar doesn't stay super high, keratin, which you need for your hair and your nails, as well as antibodies, which fight off infections. There are tons more proteins, but those are just some of the most common examples. Oh, wait, that was supposed to be foods. Move this over here. So for foods, it's meats, nuts, um, eggs, beans. Those are some common sources of proteins. Sorry about that switch. And then finally, nucleic acids. The monomer is nucleotides. So this one's kind of weird because nucleic acids are your DNA and your RNA. We don't really think about foods as being like sources of nucleic acids, but actually they kind of are because anything you eat that was formerly alive, so if you eat meat or fish or a vegetable, it has DNA in it because it was alive once. So all the foods that used to be alive, I'll just say meat, fish, and plants, are actually sources of nucleic acids. The molecules for this is DNA and RNA, which we'll talk more about in the next video. The last thing I want to say about polymers is how they're built up and how they are broken apart. So I'll just go down here and I'm going to say building, zoom in, polymers is done using dehydration synthesis. which you either saw in the lab this week or you're going to see it. But dehydration synthesis basically means that water is removed from monomers to create sticky ends that attach. And then you form a polymer. Breaking down polymers is done using hydrolysis. And hydro means water, like hydrate. Lysis means break or split. So that's exactly what it's saying. Water uses its polarity from our last week stuff to pull apart monomers. And you might remember or know that this is also called being a biological solvent. And that's how you break a polymer. So that's important for digesting. So build, dehydrate, break, hydrolysis. You put water in to break it. Okay, so the next video is going to talk more about each biomolecule in detail, but that's it for this one. Great job. Make sure you fill it out on OneNote, and I'll see you for the next one.